My name is Mishra. I get the privilege to talk to you about Waypoint and IDPs and a bunch of other stuff. And I really want to first give a shout out to the Waypoint team who are hopefully watching live. Hopefully I make them proud today. So we can get through this pretty quickly here. So the agenda is quite straightforward. We have some set of challenges that we'll talk through, talk about IDPs, hopefully decipher some of this myth that you see when it comes to IDPs in general, and then talk about how they actually help. Is it all hype, and then talk about Waypoint, but at that point, it's all live demos. And believe me, like every other live demo that I've done before, this one was unlike anything. 5 minutes before, nothing worked. So we will all go through this together as a group therapy session as we work through this live demo. And then the last slide is just looking ahead and seeing what the future of Waypoint and things like that. So, we're talking about application delivery, and this is 2024, AI is here, and you expect this thing to be first line of code to production. Someone just like waves a magic wand, and things just get to production. But in reality, which we all know, this is what you see, right? It's a blue screen with an error code on it, and this is our reality, right? By the way, did that joke actually land? I wasn't quite sure. It was too early, blue screen joke, I don't know. I appreciate the claps. So getting back to it. So there's many components when it comes to kind of delivering things from code to production. There's APIs, there's VCS providers, there's things like CI/CD, secrets, APM stuff, databases, caches for the application, the underlying underpinning, things like VPCs, network ACL, security groups, and you name it, right? And each of these categories have a numerous amount of tools, which is even more amazing, right? And then it doesn't end there. There's on-call rotations, there's ticket queues, there's documentation, things like Confluence and so on, right? So there's a lot going on. Clearly, there's a problem in standardization. And this we see when we kind of talk to our largest customers. This standardization problem exists because there's so much tooling in every piece of this puzzle, right? That there's multiple vendors, multiple context switching that's happening. And there's general this like inconsistent lack of best practices in an organization. And then the second portion is just around self-service, right? So there's this big theme of empowering developers where in reality, they're just waiting on infrastructure. They're planning a feature for 2 months out, and they're like, hey, we need to add two more other months to just like stand up the infrastructure. This is really sad. On the other side, operations is just ticket consumers. They're just like reading up these ticket queues, working on one issue at a time, which is, again, an unfortunate reality. They can't focus on the platform itself. And lastly, I don't know if you all have tried building an application today. It's challenging. Like, you're going to choose the front-end framework. You're going to choose the IDE, back-end framework, ORMs, databases. I mean, like, there's so many choices. And in an absence of some of the golden paths that an organization can put together, this becomes really inefficient as in software organization. So these are some of the big pillars, and there's the list. But I think these are the kind of the top themes that we see from customers when we talk to them. And this is where we kind of talk about IDPs in general. Like, what are these things? Is this all hype? Before we get into it, just want to talk about some of the organizational structures that exist. So there's, when we talk to customers, it's primarily like these two large personas, the two general kind of larger umbrellas of focus. One is platform, which is around things like you saw, security and infrastructure. These are the folks that put together the best-in-class standard patterns for an organization. They work with the compliance teams, security teams, kind of putting these together. And then you have the application developer that has nothing to do with infrastructure. They do not want to learn Terraform. They just want to focus on their business logic, write their Java app, or Ruby app, a Go app, a JavaScript app, and then be off to the races, right? So when we put in all the tools that you saw, like there is actually a clear separations of concerns here. The platform side is kind of responsible for the actual platform, which includes things like APM, the underlying runtime, things like Kubernetes, Nomad, Vault, putting together policies and so on. And then you have the app developer, which truly just wants to focus on code, maybe works with a VCS provider, chooses the language and kind of works through that. So there's clear separations of concerns here. The question becomes, what truly is an interface that the application view should look at when consuming platform services? So how do you make this maybe reusable, kind of best in class? What are those interfaces? And there is a variety of choices that exist today. You have the kind of the easily consumable interfaces like CLI, UI, things like that. You have things like SDKs, right? So you have, companies can kind of put together best practices in libraries. Netflix is actually, one of the companies that have done this. Put together a bunch of libraries, share that out in the organization. You consume them as software and kind of use them. But maintainability of some of these libraries becomes a challenge. And the CLI and the UI case, the interface may be simple, but then customization doesn't exist, and that becomes kind of disempowering on the developer side. Or you can just teach everyone Terraform, and I know you all know how that went for your organization. And then lastly, what I call a very unique approach. You just give everyone kubectl, you give them a cluster, and let them do what they want to do. That's another approach. And again, we all know how that in general goes. So this is where IDPs fill in, right? Like IDP is essentially this middleware that sits in the middle between the platform teams and application teams, where platform teams are essentially the producers of these standards, these golden patterns, these workflows, putting together all of kind of the best-in-class practices. Maybe 80, 90% of the company's kind of application patterns, things like, hey, we are a Java shop, so here's our kind of golden pattern of producing Java applications. On the app dev side, they're just the consumers of this. They would write the code. They don't care whether it's running on Kubernetes or ECS or using, did I open port 22 to the world, like things like that. They shouldn't be concerned about that, right? It should be already kind of defined in the framework. So this is kind of the general sense of an IDP. And when we look at the industry, here's where it gets interesting. This is Gartner's kind of report. And what they say is, by 2026, 80% of large software organizations will establish platform engineering teams as the internal providers of these reusable set of services, components, and things like that. So even at kind of the exec level, like developer experience has become like top of mind, which is a good thing. I think after a generation or like almost like decades of pain that's inflicted on some of the developers on the infrastructure side. So how does this actually help? Is this all hype, right? So the first thing is an IDP generally gives you a standardized pattern in a company. So whether it's application, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's your build pipeline, putting together best-in-class, kind of standards, publishing them, making them consumable, first thing that you want to do with IDP. The second thing is a single pane of glass, almost like a common language that you can use to talk to your platform teams, like platform teams talking to the application development teams, and then that shared language that they can kind of look to, a shared view of like who's the owner of this application, what application belongs to what infrastructure. Kind of being able to pinpoint that and query that system is super essential, and this is kind of one of the things that IDP provides you with. And one of the kind of the last pieces of this puzzle is to be able to actually have some outcome, which is to accelerate shipping software, accelerate shipping products, and so on. And when you have good quick starts, you can kind of do that in a more reliable way because these things that are validated and created by the experts, the platform team. And the North Star is truly to enable self-service. Developers don't care about infrastructure. They should be able to just kind of produce applications. That's kind of the focus. And this is where we kind of come to this interesting point with Waypoint, right? So this is the kind of the announcement that you saw early, kind of Arman announcing the general availability of Waypoint, in particular templates and add-ons being in GA as well. So hopefully I can kind of talk through this and kind of in general sense, the Waypoint's goal is to basically design a system and kind of empower the platform teams to build kind of some of these golden workflows, golden patterns. When I say golden workflows, I mean day 2 operations as well. So not only do you stand up the application and the dependencies, but also some of the CI/CD work, feature flag toggling, general sense of kind of being able to promote builds and things like that. So those operations are also in our kind of span of focus when we think through Waypoint and kind of the vision of Waypoint. And the true goal is to enable, developer self-service. That they are the consumers, they are the mass consumers of that platform. So with that, I will get into the most nerve-wracking part of this whole talk, which is live demos. I don't know if anyone's done live demos today, but I guess I'll break the ice with that. And to help me is my friend and mentor, Kelsey Hightower, who's who's around me in spirit, and I know he'll support me, and I know he's like cheering on from home, hopefully. So I'm going to go through this, and we'll see how this goes. So let me log in, and I hope you all can see my screen. OK, is that big enough? It looks like it's big enough. OK, let's go. So the first thing, and this is not the welcome page for Waypoint, by the way. So You come to HCP, you're like, okay, I want to start using Waypoint. So you click on Waypoint, and you see essentially a set of like these primitives. In this case, I already have an application, but I'll kind of walk through the journey of like getting there and creating an application and so on. So as a platform engineer, your first place is kind of the templates page, which kind of puts together the golden patterns that exist in your organization. And I'll kind of quickly walk you through, I already have pre-existing templates for this demo, just a matter of time, but I'll kind of quickly walk you through what this template creation process looks like. So you're going to put in a template name. I'm just going to use, if I can type, this is when a presenter is nervous and like he's shivering and not able to type. Anyway, just bear with me. So there's the example, and then we'll do an example here. And then you select essentially link a golden pattern with a Terraform module. So here's where you can kind of go to your Terraform registry. Sorry, I was just trying a run. As you can imagine, the demo didn't work before, so here we go. So here's in your registry, just filter for no-code modules, and you can pick the module that you kind of want to look at. You can kind of view readmes and so on. So in this case, you get a series of no-code modules. I'm just going to select this one. And you'll see automatically pulled in are the variables that were defined with that module, right? So these are kind of pulled in. And what this enables you to do is kind of preset some of these values if you wanted to. So in this case, there's 2 values that are already preset. You can select them automatically, or you can let your developer select them when they create the application using the template. Or in this case, you can provide it with like a GitHub org, if I can type again, and go next. And then you can describe what the template is about. You can actually even give them the developer instructions. Hey, once you create the application, here's what you need to do. Maybe you're running some database migrations and so on, things like that. So in this case, this is all fully kind of supportive of the Markdown and so on. You can use some of the templating variables and so on in here, and you can label these templates as needed, and you're off to the races. So what we should do is actually kind of see the developer's view of doing this, right? So they come in, they want to create their first application. They can essentially select from a series of templates that exist. So in this case, I'm feeling like today, I'm going to create a Go application. That's what I feel like. And whenever a presenter tells you that they feel like they want to create a particular application, there's something special about this template. So this is like them buying time to figure out whether they're ready or not. Anyway, we'll go next. I'll give this application a name. So let's say example Golang HashiCorp. I think it's a pretty simple and concise application name. And then I'll select, as you see, my platform team is like, hey, you need to select one of these variables. I'm going to select one just to keep things simple and not test the demo gods today. I think they're not on my side. But we will see. I have backups. I have a video that I can play. Not a problem. So immediately you see there's actually a Terraform run that's running. And they see developer instructions. They see some inputs. They see some manage options, which allows them to delete the application. Essentially, it's kind of a concise way of giving them, hey, what's happening here? And behind the scenes here, if you look at, the Terraform run's kicked off. So you can see like the plan's finished. They may or may not have access to HCP Terraform. That's up to your organization. In general, you can keep them in Waypoint. That's fine. At least they know there's something happening. There's infrastructure being provisioned. But this kind of collates things for you. And when you look at the workspace itself, so it says it's created by Waypoint. So you can kind of link these things through, and you can click through and go back to the Waypoint application that's using that workspace. So while this is kind of happening, let me just quickly go back and see, apply finished. OK, let's go to the overview page. So as part of my instructions, I've said, hey, wait for the output section. Once that's available, you can visit the applications. In this case, I get an application URL, and I get a repo URL. So they're like, oh, OK, I have a repo that's ready. So let me open that up. Immediately, you see, there's actually a GitHub workflow that's building. Again, all of this, they didn't actually do anything here. They just selected a template. So this is actually like building a Docker image for them. And this is all the power of Terraform provider ecosystem. So anything you can imagine that you want to kind of Terraform, you can, and you can kind of put behind this template. And you can kind of actually use interpolation. You can use kind of conditionals. You can kind of get to a point where you can kind of build a standard like macro module that has a bunch of this stuff. So that's that. Oops, sorry. Compromised password. That's not good. Anyway, so yeah. So if I go to settings here and see my secrets, go to actions, you'll see there's also secrets that's injected. So here's where you can use things like HVS. You can kind of sync secrets through. You can use the HCP provider to kind of create that secret when the Terraform runs, sync that through if you wanted to, things like that. So I think that's kind of the correlation between some of our products that exist today. So next, let's actually access the application. And this works You all have to clap, because this, to be honest, was not working when I got on stage. So let's see. Oh my God. Oh my. Whew. Whew. I was nervous. I'm not going to lie, I was nervous. OK, good. So you get some of the runtime information about the app. This is a very simple app. It's a Go application. It's backed by some feature flags, things like that. So just very, very simple, nothing complex, just for the demo's sake here. So next thing I want to do is, OK, my app has become popular. You all can access it right now. You're like, somehow like DDoSing it and things like that. I'm like, oh no, I need a cache. I need some way to kind of, handle this load, right? So that's where add-ons come in. So add-ons are ways to kind of incrementally give like these single set of infrastructure things like S3 buckets, domain names, load balancers, and so on. So in this case, it's a cache. It's a Redis cache. It's a serverless Redis cache, imagine. There's no server behind the scenes. There is servers, by the way. I don't know if anyone tells you that there's no servers behind serverless applications, they're like. Anyway, you can just hit install here, right? As soon as you hit install, this kind of installs the actual workspace. So if I go in here, add-ons are very similar to templates. They are backed by the same modules. They kick off the same runs. But the developer kind of look at it as kind of these building blocks that they can use to kind of evolve the application over time. And it's all self-service, so you're not really talking to your platform team. And these are all predefined for you. So as you can see, this is kicked off. All right, so while this kicks off, this takes about a minute. So I'm going to use that time to explain you the next. And we'll come back to this add-on, I promise, and kind of talk about this as this gets ready. I want to talk about, let's say this cache is ready. I want this cache URL to be added to my application. What is that process? That's where kind of actions come into play. So these actions were automatically assigned to my application. I used a template. These actions got automatically assigned. I didn't show you the kind of the assignment process, but if you go to templates, you can actually assign these day 2 actions. And then they give me a variety of operations. They're very simple. They're essentially push buttons. So in this case, it says, hey, I have an action that says update the welcome message. So I'm going to say hello HashiCorp. This is the second demo. Hopefully the demo gods are with me. I have to switch my screen immediately to the application to show you. Hopefully this updates. Please. Oh, second demo done. OK. So in general, I think from our aspect, it's essentially like just toggling a feature flag, right? Behind the scenes, what happens is if you go to the action run, it's just a very simple HTTP kind of upstream you can call with some variable, some data, some payload. And that's kind of the simple form of this, right? So you can kind of do this. And let me go back to my the application, this one. I want to see if my add-on is done. OK, it's still running. OK, that's fine. We'll go to actions. I want to show you like one of the internals of this action. So let's look at this like welcome message action that we just triggered. So if I edit this action, it has like a really simple kind of human-friendly name and description. It has a bunch of local variables that you can use. So it could be anything. In this case, there's like a bunch of API things I need to kind of trigger that feature flag. And you can also use sensitive things like API tokens and stuff. You can use like kind of the sensitive variables here, very similar to Terraform. And then you have different types of actions. So today we have 2 types of actions available. Custom, which is the HTTP kind of really simple, put together an HTTP endpoint. And you have the agent, which I think in our case is a little bit more advanced. So this essentially allows you to bridge your private operations that you might want to run. And Waypoint doesn't store any config. You essentially run an agent locally, and I'll show you in a second. And then it triggers those scripts or workflows that you want to kind of do. But it kind of gives you this primitive way of kind of like being able to extend Waypoint into other CI/CD flows or other private things, or even Ansible scripts that you want to do and give developer. But developers only see that button. They don't really see this internal. You kind of set them up for them. So this is a simple action here. So let me just go back to show you the application again, see if that's done. I hope it's done. OK, there you go. So now if you go to add-ons, and I see my installed add-on, and I go to outputs for that add-on, so again, it gives me an instruction, hey, you have this URL that's available. So you can copy this in. I don't want to do this the hard way, edit my config file, do all of that. I want to do some fancy way of like using agents and action. So let me switch to my terminal. So this is a really simple config file that you can write for agents. And this is all in your control, by the way. So Waypoint, like the control plane doesn't know about this. This is like local to you. My on-prem is my laptop, so I'm going to use this as kind of an example. And you have like things like you can execute commands. And you can also use variables. So you can use like, hey, give me the application name that's using this action. So you can kind of really customize this as you need. I have this like force ECS deployment action in here. So let me do this. Let me start the agent, HCP. So no one saw that. HCP, at this point, the cat's out of the bag. The agent has, you can run the agent. You can essentially point it to the config like any other HashiCorp product. It's very simple. It's a one-liner. You can use this HCP CLI kind of to trigger a bunch of other waypoint things. In this case, I'm using the agent subcommand, so it's pretty straightforward. And I will run in debug mode so you can see some of the fancy output that comes out of the system. So anyway, okay, I'm going to wait for this to kind of get queued up. Now I'll go back to my application, and I'll go action. I'll say, hey, I want a new deployment, and I want to run this deployment. And this one actually uses that agent action. So I'm going to just hit run, and this, if I see details, it's queued, right? So it kind of waits a few seconds to kind of let the operation queue, and then agents can be, you can run a pool of these over time. You can target a particular group of agents, and there's a bunch of other internals that I won't get into just because of the time and so on. I think here's what I'll do. I'll just restart this agent so I can pick this action up immediately, so I don't have to wait that polling period. So there you go. It kind of triggered something. It did a bunch of stuff on the Amazon CLI stuff here, and you can see it's successful in here. Now, if we go back to our cluster and we refresh and we see our application, and I go to my task, technically, I should have, okay, this is the limit of the demos today. I think this is where the demo gods are like, okay, you're pushing it, Mishra, don't do that. Oh, there is something pending, okay. Let me refresh. Oh, there we go, so there's something kind of coming online. So let me switch back to the screen here. You'll see a cache kind of value populate as that deployment gets healthy. And the way that works is you're essentially letting the add-on kind of create some of these secret values in the secrets manager, and then you're kind of pulling that in your ECS job. And then when you reload the job, it pulls in the new environment variables, which has the cache populated, and then it uses it if cache is enabled. It's a pretty straightforward thing. Oh, did that show up? Did that go away? Is that baiting me? What is that? Did that come up? I don't know. Give me a second. Let me go back to, oops, here. Yeah, let me see what's the state. Oh, it says it's running. Was that the extent of, I think that was it. That's where I pushed the limit. I think this is, at least it did the right thing. It actually spun up the new task. Let me just quickly see logs. I'm not going to do a live debugging session here, everyone. This is just me trying to see if it actually worked. Oop. That right there is another reality of software engineering. You see sometimes, oh, okay. Okay, I think you can clap. I think you can clap. This is why I love doing live demos, because you fail so many times, and people are like with you. They're like cheering for you. And then there are some people in the front. They're like, I hope this person fails on stage. I want to see that. Everyone wants to see us downfall for whatever reason. But anyway, let's go back to my application here. So you kind of get the idea, right? So you have a bunch of actions that are auto-assigned. You can run them on-prem. You can run them kind of do upstream kind of API stuff, things like that. You get a bunch of outputs, inputs, things like that. You can customize that if needed. So the last kind of bit I want to kind of showcase here is a more exciting demo. For that, I need my phone, and what I'll do is I'll increase my volume so you all can hear this. What I'll do is I'll kind of mimic a situation in real life. I just came up with it right now, actually. I'm just thinking through the script. How do I want to position this? So if I go through this, and I have another action, let's say I assign it to my application, and in this case, I see something as an application engineer. I come in, I see something that's wrong. It's not reported in my health system yet. None of my monitoring is triggering, but I know there's something deeply wrong with the system. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to trigger an on-call incident. Like, how do I do that? So let's say they have this action predefined by their platform teams, like, hey, if nothing, if you can't figure this out, like, and there's something serious, use this button. With great power comes great responsibility. So you're like, oh, things are on fire. You're like really going at it. You're like explaining to them, yes. And you can write some descriptions. You can kind of give the context to the platform engineers. And you hit run. I hope you all can pick this up. Let me move out of silent mode. And I'll keep it close to my mic. And I'll show you the notification in a second. But let's see. Did you hear that? OK, that's good. That's PagerDuty notification right here. So I just triggered an on-call incident, and I assigned it to myself because I'm a person of one company. A company of one person. Anyway, so that's kind of the extensibility, right? So you can kind of extend this as you need, extend this as you feel fit. And then the last thing is you can just clean things up. You can just go to the application. You can hit delete. You can delete the application. And what this will do is it's going to do a cascade delete on the Terraform side. So it would kind of delete the workspace that's associated with the application. It'll also delete all the add-ons that you install and kind of clean things up. And in the future, you can kind of imagine like things that are short-lived. You can have short-lived applications with TTLs and things like that. So that's kind of the extensibility portion here. So now I want to kind of take you through the future. And that was the end of live demos, by the way. Thank you so much for being with me. I do want to thank our security team. They helped me just before this, even though I blew it by showing my AWS keys on screen. But I hope you forgive me. I made up for it with live demos. So looking ahead, right, like what's kind of next for Waypoint? So we have a few different themes we want to kind of focus on. One of them is this series of action integrations. You can imagine this thing is so extensible. Today we have two types of integrations. One is an HTTP integration, one's an agent integration, which is more for on-prem and more extensibility. But we want first-class integrations, things with GitHub Actions, things like Azure DevOps and other CI/CD tools. So that's kind of the ecosystem we want to kind of continue extending with the Actions and Day 2 feature set. The second thing is just this general sense of environments that doesn't exist today in Waypoint. So things like, hey, being able to model user environments, being able to do things like environment promotion, things like that, being able to do short-lived environments for QA stuff. So you can kind of spin an environment up on a pull request, spin it down, it'll spin up a whole thing with a bunch of values. And this is all backed by Terraform primitives. So again, we are backing things with best-in-class industry kind of standard primitives like workspaces and so on. And then kind of continue to do that mapping, but expose the right kind of primitives that developers understand. Developers understand environments. They kind of can know how to work with that. That is kind of the story here. And lastly, I talked a lot about this single pane of glass, and we want to kind of truly bring that to Waypoint. So, kind of bringing in some of the applications with ownership information, metadata, being able to associate what application belongs to what infrastructure, showing you this like out-of-the-box experience that you can get when it comes to kind of annotating data into Waypoints. That's kind of the last piece of this. Hopefully this is exciting set of things, and please talk to me if you feel that there's more things, and there's a long list, but these are the kind of the main themes. Please check out our amazing documentation and tutorial that exists. Our education team has worked really hard on this, so please check that out. Check out our website, waypointproject.io. And again, I want to really thank everyone who's made this kind of release possible for our team. I want to thank the Waypoint team. I hope you're watching. I hope you're proud. This great work that you've done. I'm just a spokesperson for you all, so I appreciate everything you do. So thank you so much.